So I think most of us have heard about the financial services, the capital market, and implication of blockchain on those industry. One industry which people have started talking about of late is supply chain. So I'm going to talk about how blockchain is going to revolutionize and transform this industry. And this is Sanjay Sharma, and I come from QTCPlus, which is predominantly on the procurement automation part, where we are using technologies like IoT, which is Internet of Things. Because even though whatever said and done about blockchain as a entity may not be able to do a lot of things when it comes to supply chain. And I trust most of us are aware about supply chain. If not, please raise your hand and I'll quickly take you through the supply chain part, what it is and how does it work. As the name suggests, supply chain and blockchain, the moment we use the word chain, it seems like it is already in somewhere. Supply chain, value chain, and all those terms, they are very familiar when people talk about overall strategy in terms of your procurement to the fulfillment. The guys who are aware about the industry environment, they are also aware about how the procurement works. And typically the things what people have addressed in last 40 years is all ERPs. We have all heard about ERPs, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, and so on and so forth. What ERP was doing was, it's more like a centralized environment, where it was taking care of end-to-end processes within an organization. Of course, there is another concept which came in later, which was DRPs, the distributed resource planning, which was trying to collaborate with your other stakeholders more and more in terms of your distributors and so on. But what about the secondary sales? What about all the other systems? Because not necessarily everyone may be using the same system. And that's where people are started evaluating, are there some better technologies where we can do that? What are the issues there? Like if you look at, because I don't need to read through those, the challenges is always about somewhere supply chain get broken. If I come to the simple context in terms of our food chain, there are times when things get mixed in the food, the spurious food which we call it, and then government, they go for the regulation and look for the investigation and they try to find out where it has gone. And where it takes is someone has come somewhere in between the supply chain and they are the culprit. Same way for pharma, which I am going to take as an example also in the subject case, where a lot of spurious drugs, they get transported within supply chain. Within pharma, the other concept comes is in terms of clinical research. The clinical research is one of the important things where the drug discovery is being done. So I'm going to talk about that in a while. So coming back from the ERPs, these are the concepts which we are hearing about ERPs, what they were doing, the vendor management part, the fulfillment part, the assembly part, the inventory management part, and so on and so forth. But as I said, it was all about centralized system. Was it serving the purpose? Yes, it was. That was the reason it was so popular in last 30-40 years. That is still the reason, like most of the organizations, especially the product organization, they are investing in ERPs. Then what is the need to go for blockchain kind of concept? Of course, it is not yet decided where it's going to be blockchain, because we are just evaluating whether it's going to be blockchain or something else. And as we all know, the shelf life of any new technology is going down. Chances in 2022, we may be talking about something else which may not be blockchain, but chances are they might have evolved from something similar like blockchain. So these are the typical questions which generally people keep asking. The 5 Ys, 5 Ws and 1 H. Like what is the issue which we are facing with the ERPs? Why ERP is not the best solution? What is that which ERP is not addressing? What is that which we need beyond ERP? If it is centralized, why can't we make all the people part of these stakeholders, part of collaboration, be part of centralized systems? Like the Reliance Industries, when they did it for backward integration, right? They have bought everything under their own umbrella and then it becomes a whole system. But world is not as simple. It's very complex. And more people keep becoming part of the whole supply chain. New vendors will become part of it, new distributors will become part of it, and of course your customers, they are asking better and new things all the time. So let me quickly spend maybe a couple of moments on these 5 Ws and 1 H. Why? The first question is always about why. And whenever we talk about the why, right from the Darwin's time, we talk about the survival of the fittest, even in the business context. Why do we need to do that? Because we have to keep growing. We have to be innovative. We have to ensure that we are going ahead of our competition. We have to ensure that our productivity is increasing, our efficiency is increasing. That's the reason the why question comes in. And that's the reason, most of the time we keep talking about and evaluating new and new technologies. Of course, blockchain, most of the things, the work which we have been part of, and some of the peers who I am talking to are more on the POC at this stage. So we will talk about it, we will touch upon those topics. The other question comes what? What is missing in ERPs? ERP is a good system. Come again? Traceability, kind of, yes, I'll touch upon that. What else? ERP is generally a one organization system. For example, in your supply chain, when I talk about the supply chain, these all are the stakeholders within your value chain. Okay? So chances are, someone may be using SAP, someone may be using homegrown application, someone may be using an Oracle application, someone may be using their legacy application, maybe PeopleSoft, maybe BAN. These systems, they do not interact with each other, unfortunately. The guys who come from most of these ERPs background, they know, yes, we have created a lot of BAPIs, interfaces, and so on and so forth. But does it serve the purpose? It doesn't. Data migration is those guys who are part of the ERP implementation, they know what is the meaning of data migration, right? The why comes because the truth is lost somewhere else. Because for me, I am treating that as a PO while someone else is treating that as an SO, and third one may be treating it as a transporter. How do I do the packing? How I am going to use that in my vehicle? What will be my routing and all those things, right? So why comes the truth get lost somewhere within those systems, right? Communication, the guys who are part of possibly the implementation part, they know the biggest issue in any implementation is communication. If you don't communicate, the other party doesn't know what's happening there. Or if you communicate late, if you communicate wrong. So that's the reason we talk about the what part, the truth part. And truth is something, it should not happen. Today I say, yes, it is lying in my warehouse, and tomorrow I'll say it is still under manufacturing, right? That's generally a case, especially those guys who are part of the fulfillment processes, where your vendor will say, yes sir, we have already dispatched it, and then next day he'll say, sir, yes, it's in the production and we have a lead time of 2 more days. So that was the reason of what? Where? Where's? Someone answered that question before, and where? The tracking part. Where should I get that information? On my system, on my laptop, on my mobile. And where is my inventory? Because we are talking about supply chain. The tracking part comes in. Where is lying? Whether it's on the road in transit, whether it's in the factory, whether it's in the warehouse, or whether it has already reached into my in my location, but I'm not able to trace it. That's the reason the where comes in. Who? Everybody. If you are dealing with e-commerce, even as a customer, because you have to go to office at 10 o'clock and you are waiting for delivery guy who said, I will reach home at 9 o'clock, and at 9:50 he said, sir, I'm reaching in 10 minutes. And at 9:55 he said, I'm reaching in 10 minutes. So everybody is affected. And then you call their customer service and you tell, can you please postpone it to 6 o'clock? And then customer service will call back this delivery guy, and these whole guys, the who part comes into the picture. That's a very simplistic example. In an organization, the typical organization, there are so much complexities. The procurement guys, they do not really talk to the guys who are sitting at the dispatch. The guys who are releasing PO, they may not be in direct touch with the business guys because business has provided them that requirement maybe 2 months back. So that's the reason, the who, everybody who is part of the whole ecosystem is part of who. When? Because people say, yes, I sent you an email. Sir, I have updated in my ERP system. It will sync up with the entire system maybe by the end of the day. You will get that information maybe 24 hours from now. I need a medicine now. And your doctor say, yes, medicine is on the way and it may take 4 hours. So you have to be in pain for 4 hours. That's it, not a big deal, 4 hours. It has to be timely. And when we talk about blockchain, of course it's a complex system, it's being evolved. We talk about so many systems get updated at the same time. People do talk about DLT part. In supply chain, DLT may or may not be applicable in all the cases. Because when we talk about supply chain, we may not necessarily be talking about public blockchain. Public blockchain is a good case when we talk about land registry, typical things where your audiences are all over the world. But in a typical enterprise environment, you generally go with a private blockchain. And I don't need to delve too much into private blockchain because I assume that all of us might be aware about what the private blockchain is, how do you control, who will access, what is the kind of information, who will be transpired, and who will be doing those approvals as part of DLT. You don't necessarily need to go through a typical Bitcoin 51% and so on and so forth. Yes, you might have heard about POS, POA, and I don't know how many PA has come in last so many months. How part? How is actually blockchain? Is there anything else which we can certainly do without blockchain? Why are we talking about blockchain? Because it has become a most commonly used word in last 2.5 years, being invented about 8-9 years back. Why are we talking about how part? Because I think how is more important. Because the last presenter was also talking about the business case. It's not necessarily you force fit blockchain into everything. It's not going to work. Because there are times when blockchain will actually impede your overall performance because there are multiple systems involved. Blockchain may not be required, as I said, if an organization is completely managing entire thing because they have one central system. You don't need blockchain. Blockchain is not needed in a logistics service provider if you have already outsourced the entire piece of work to him, which we generally term as 4PL. Then you don't need blockchain. The answer comes how, and possibly we may not have the better answer. That's the reason today we are talking about blockchain. Maybe 2 years down the line, we may be talking about something else, and we really don't know. So, for this discussion, I will focus only on blockchain. So, this is where the how part comes in, and that's where I'm going to spend maybe another 15 to 20 minutes. Anybody who is representing procurement in this audience, who has worked in procurement, part of procurement? Great. So even if those guys who are not from procurement, at least everybody is doing some kind of purchasing for your household. When you go to Amazon or Flipkart or likes of those companies, what are the typical 3 things which you are looking at while you are visiting those websites? What are the typical 3 things? Price, the product, do I have multiple products, the variety of products, the service part, delivery time, quality possibly someone said, whether the product which I am going to get, is it the quality product or is going to be something which is nice to look but not much in terms of application. These are the 3 things. Procurement guys are like you and me. They have not come from any other planet. Only thing is, we are doing purchasing for our own home. They are doing purchasing for enterprise. Enterprise is a bigger home. So for them also, of course, people may add innovation also, the new products, the replacement products, the better products, and so on and so forth. But I will plug everything as a part of the variety. What else do you look for when you go to shop? When you are comparing between Flipkart, Amazon, and likes of those? Price is one thing. Let's assume price we have already addressed. If I'm just a roadside vendor, will you purchase from me? and you don't know my location. Credibility. In e-commerce, who is doing this credibility part? We trust Amazon is doing that. We trust the platform is doing that. In organization, who does it? Procurement guy. How do they do the credibility part? They check all the documentation, right? So price, credibility, service and quality. Because one small piece, because I was part of inventory management for GE gas turbines, which generally has about 10,000 to 50,000 different components. And if one component, which may be worth maybe $20, is not available for, let's say, 1 hour, you are going to lose millions of dollars, because that gas turbine is not operating at that point of time. So we are not going by the amount of money which is tied with one component, but the amount of money which is tied with the entire value chain. That's the reason this service part and quality part comes into picture. What if the person who has delivered me a product, he has given me a wrong product? What is the cost of that wrong product? We all have heard about quality cost and so on and so forth. Because of that wrong product, my production line can be stopped for maybe few minutes, or the project which has to be completed by tomorrow may be delayed by few more hours. Same with services. The lead time which is promised by my vendor is 2 days, and for whatever reason, because I am not informed, because as I said, communication is key. If there is a delay, which is part and parcel of everyday's life, if there is a proper communication, and that's why blockchain also helps you in, and the communication, the trustworthy communication, you are not changing those communication, then possibly your service as well as your parameters are addressed. Reliability. When we come to this room, when you are attending this conference, what was the first thing which came into your mind when you were registering for this conference? Is it a reliable conference? Because there are so many blockchain conferences which is happening all around. Am I going to learn anything during those 8 hours? Right? It is as simple as that. For a business also, reliability is one of the key. I am not going to tell transparency and so on and so forth. Compliance. The earlier speaker was talking about GDPR, General Data Protection. GDPR has become more and more significant in last 3-4 months when it has become law. Of course, I was part of BS 10012 implementation in SAP 3 years back, because that was a law in Europe in 2014. So what it has done is, because right now, even though in India we are really not very sensitive about our data, maybe culturally we are not really bothered too much about it, but worldwide, especially in developed countries, people are really sensitive about their data. And moreover, organization all over the world, because if I talk to my transporters, they say, no sir, my customer data is very private for me, very confidential I keep. And I know their customer data is lying everywhere outside their organization. The compliance also comes into picture if there is an audit agency, if government is doing an audit. For example, going back to pharma case, whether the drug which is going to clinical research or the manufacturing unit which is producing maybe generics or drugs, are they complying with all the regulations? Of course, FDA is more popular because more and more Indian companies make a lot of business when they are exporting it. FDA, they come every second year and do this audit. And what do they look for? The guys who may be representing or they are coming from an audit background, they all know it's about documentation. It's all about documentation. And how do we do that? How do we do the documentation which is required, let's say, for the purpose of ISO or so on and so forth? the internal audits, external audits. How do we do that? If the audit is planned on 30th of September, I will start working from today. And what I'll do, I will create all the backdated documents from today till 30th of September. And how do I do that? The document which was supposed to, for example, maybe testing, maybe inspection, which was supposed to happen in maybe January or March, which I might have missed out for whatever reason, I'll create that document today and push that into the system. And when the auditors comes, they generally go through your documents, right? Why do they spend so much of time in documentation? It's so simple, right? Go check it, sign it off. They ask you cross question to ensure that what is appearing in the document is done in the rightful way. That's where blockchain will be another handy technology because of immutability part which we keep hearing about it. Commercial part. I touched upon that very briefly. More and more procurement people, they are talking about cash flow. Why are they talking about cash flow? They are talking about zero inventory. Especially if again I go back to e-commerce because I think why I'm going back to e-commerce is because that's easy for you to relate. Most of these companies, they are making payment after 30 days or 45 days. While they are collecting payment from consumers almost on a daily basis or immediate basis. What these procurement guys are talking about is the money which is attached to my inventory. I am talking about negative inventory, cash flow. These procurement guys, I was so surprised, of course, that surprise has come again and again in the last 1 year or so. These procurement guys are also talking about the language of cash flow, which was not heard till 2015. I have not yet come across any procurement person till 2015 who was talking about cash flow. You are always talking about negotiation, bringing the price down, the lead time and typical other things. But now these guys are talking about cash flow because their management is saying possibly we can untie that money which is tied with the inventory and use it somewhere else. We can rotate that money faster. Like the way we used to call that an inventory turnover, even it's the inventory turnover which is called as the consignment of the negative inventory managed by the customer. So these are the typical dynamics in a supply chain, current supply chain, and of course it all started with Dell way back in late 90s, and now more and more e-commerce organizations, more and more e-commerce companies, they are going a step further and further and further. Disruption. I think this is one word which is commonly used. What do you mean by disruption? How many of you like disruption in your life? We talk about let's disrupt the whole ecosystem, the whole environment of the business. But how many of you are prepared for disruption in your life? What if this light goes off? What will happen? It's a disruption, right? Will we welcome it? Maybe, maybe not. But why organizations are behind this disruption all the time? I trust most of you are representing some organization or other, and you may be hearing this word on and off from your senior management. We are talking about disruption technology, the AIs. I remember AI, we were hearing right from late 90s, and even people are still talking about we have to actually go deeper and deeper and use this AI, machine learning and so on and so forth. And that's going to be the next disruption of this technology. So let me leave that disruption part here. Okay. So for me, disruption is nothing but innovation and doing the things in a better way, more effectively, more productively. And blockchain per se may not be able to do wonders. blockchain has to be used with some other technologies. Even blockchain along with ERPs, IoT, the tracking part, someone has mentioned the tracking part, I will touch upon that. IoTs, the sensors, the goods which are traveling from, let's say, from here to somewhere else. In Indian context, now GST is there, so possibly there are not many issues in terms of the border movement and all. But what if the goods are moving internationally? It is changing hands, it is changing ownership, it is changing valuation. And how do you get this information? How do we get this information in terms of tracking? Any first-hand experience rather than the the academic experience? When you order something online, you get a tracking status. Your article is dispatched. It will be delivered tomorrow. It is packed, so on and so forth. In the industrial context also, these are the typical small sensors which are put in your equipment, which will tell where exactly is that. Going back for my transportation kind of background, we have seen, especially in Indian context when GST was not there, the trucker will move from Bangalore to Delhi, and midway, of course it is not midway, about 300 kilometers before Delhi, he will steer his vehicle towards his village where he will spend a night or two. Okay. The travel time, which is generally about 36 hours, which we found out now, we used to give about 4 days to our customer, because all the exigencies are already built into that. And the trucker, because that is the only way to get the information about your vehicle, because in vehicle is your inventory. He will say, sir, I am in Ahmedabad today, while actually he has driven very, very fast, and he reached to some place in maybe either in UP or in Rajasthan, where he is all relaxing. Okay. And possibly if there is a marriage, then he will delay that by 1 more day. And then your customer will be, they are furious because they were expecting this to come maybe tomorrow. And then, because you don't have any first-hand information with you, you are going here and there, trying to trace that guy, trace your vehicle, and find out where it is. What we have done is, that's what we did in 2015. Let's say if your vehicle is carrying some 100 articles. In one article, because if we were putting this GPS device into their vehicle, they will deactivate it after 24 hours, stating that the battery has gone off and so on and so forth. So what we have started doing is, in one of the article, we will put our GPS with the right battery life, because if it is going from here to Calcutta, we will put a GPS which will hold for about 10 days. And if it is going to Delhi, maybe for about 4 or 5 days. Now we are not anymore depending on the driver's information. Of course, driver will have his own version, but we have our own version, right? That is the reason this blockchain along with IoT is needed. AI part. What does AI do, by the way? Because I trust most of you are aware about this word, heard about this word. What is that AI or machine learning? Some people keep misusing both the words. They interchangeably use this machine learning and AI. What it does? It provides you the intelligence based on your past data. That is what we were doing in demand forecasting all our life. Since I come from supply chain, that is what we were investing so much of efforts. You are talking about seasonality, patterns, so on and so forth, and after that also we will multiply something called alpha plus beta to ensure that all those errors are taken care. What AI is doing today? Because earlier we did not have access to all the information. The information was lying in silos. So we were using our own intelligence, our own experience. So if my demand forecasting will say I have to keep a safety stock of 5 days and an inventory stock of 25 days, what I will do is both I will multiply with a factor of 1.2 plus 1. So, 5 will become 6 plus 1 7 days and the 25 will become 30 plus 1 31 days. What AI has done? AI has actually reproduced all the intelligence from the data which was lying somewhere else. And that is what is going to help even blockchain. Blockchain will not tell you about the behavior of your people, the stakeholders. What if in my chain someone is not updating the information? Blockchain cannot go and take their hand and say, okay, put the information. What if someone is putting a wrong information? Because someone has to correct it. Someone has to advise them, right? Especially when we talk about the configurators, what it does is, in case if there needs to be a number which represent, let's say 1000, and by mistake I am entering maybe 2 digit, the system will stop me, right? Because blockchain at the end of the day, all said and done, of course, when we talk about POS, some people say it can be done through machines and machines, but it's no longer the case in all the other application. It will be human. Okay, even the guys who are doing the mining, they are also human, right? Even of course they are using, they are facilitating it through systems, the more computing power and so on. That's where the AI comes into picture. Again, I will not go deeper into what all is talking about, but let me quickly touch upon the last one, which is general. What blockchain does? Ownership. In supply chain, most of the people keep talking about, have you heard about this FOBs and all those words? Especially those items which is coming from outside the country or items which are going from our country, free on board, Incoterms. Okay, so basically these are the commercial terms which talks about when an item ownership is moved from me to the other person, which means in case if anything happens, who will raise the insurance? Who will be the rightful owner of it? So, in a typical supply chain, generally complex supply chain will change ownership about 7 to 10 times and change hands about 30 times. When we talk about change hands, it's about moving from one transporter to other transporter, maybe to freight forwarder, to maybe a distributor, maybe to the various people in the supply chain. And ownership gets changed about 7 to 10 times, because manufacturer to distributor to C&F to retailer and so on and so forth, depending on how complex supply chain is. Who is going to do the insurance? Who is going to claim the insurance? Who is going to get the money out of insurance? Because chances are, if something gets lost, the first thing comes is which territory? Who is the owner of that material at that point of time? Is he covered in the insurance? If he is covered in the insurance, has he got all the information? Whether the transfer of ownership has happened? Because many a times, you know why insurance companies take so much of time when they are processing your claims? They are verifying the information, that's it. If they get what they need, and of course there are inefficiencies in their own processes also, because anyway it's also a organization where people work between themselves. But most of the time the delay happened because they try to find out the documentation part, the verification part. The other important aspect is the fraud. Fraud, anyway, I think we heard about this fraud more and more in terms of financial frauds, the money laundering and so on. But in medicine, about 7 to 8% of the overall medicine which are in circulation, they are not the right medicines. And the likes of Pfizer, they are really worried about it. because they have to do the recall, and which I am going to cover in the next slide also. And where does this fraud happens? We don't know. The investigation goes always in a reactive way, which means someone has found out the medicine which they are using is not from Pfizer, for example. I am just taking a name. It is using maybe a different word. And now Pfizer, when it goes back into their production lot and so on and so forth, they found out this lot was never manufactured, neither in my facility nor in my outsourced facility, because most of these pharma companies, they have a lot of outsourced facilities. So what do? They have to recall that wherever it has been done. And how it has happened, because the process does not end in terms of identifying what has happened. It's also investigate where it has happened, why it has happened. Is it the vehicle which got lost somewhere in the border? It is coming from Chennai to Bangalore. In Hosur, the vehicle has changed, right? How do they get this information? They get this information based out of technologies like IoTs, because that IoT, when we talk about the sensors may be put up in the cartons, maybe in the vehicles, which talks about that vehicle movement has not happened beyond Hosur. It has lost somewhere. And if it is happening for the third time, they will ensure that all the vehicles which is coming or crossing the Hosur are taken care of well. Oh, I am already, okay, sorry. Okay guys, so I think I'll spend maybe 5 minutes on this. I'll not go too deeper into that because there is another next presentation. So this is a whole supply chain. Pharma supply chain, why I have taken an example is because pharma in a way covers your FMCG also. Some people call it CPG, right? Because pharma will have both kinds of supply chain, which is forward supply chain as well as reverse supply chain. People call it reverse logistics as well, right? So whenever something which has expired, I'll just talk about this piece, the expired which needs purging. That's an additional thing in pharma, and blockchain is going to be helpful in most of these cases. That said, ladies and gentlemen, feel free to ask any question if you have.
Thank you.